evening again. The fire is lively now, throwing jittery shadows across the low ceiling like it's trying to reenact a dramatic play with nothing but flickers and smoke. The stew pot bubbles lazily, sending out thick, savory waves of turnip-scented steam. And at your feet, because where else would they be, are the animals. Yes, the animals. Your unofficial housemates. Your livestock-turned heating system. Your forever foot warmers. You reach down and scratch the dog behind the ears. It thumps its tail once, then goes back to pretending it isn't fully occupying the best spot by the hearth. Right beside it, 2 chickens roost quietly in the corner. They're not there for fun. It's survival. Outside, it's too cold for feathers and feet that aren't wrapped in socks. Inside, it's still cold, but at least there's a fire and a group body heat strategy. Plus, they lay eggs, sometimes, so they've earned their place by the wall. Then there's the pig. She's lying near the door, snoring like an old man with sinus issues. You named her Maud. She doesn't respond to it. She responds to scraps and mild flattery, and that's good enough. You'd think living with animals would be disgusting. And, yes, it is. There's hair. There's occasional poop. There's the sound of chewing at ungodly hours. But mostly, you stop noticing. Because these animals are part of your winter toolkit. Warmth machines with personalities and hooves. They were brought inside not out of affection but necessity. When the temperature plummets, livestock left outside can freeze, or get sick, or just waste precious energy trying to stay warm. But inside, they give off body heat. They breathe warm air. They're space heaters that occasionally cluck or grunt. Historians have long debated how common this practice was. Some argue that only the poorest brought livestock indoors. Others suggest it was far more widespread, especially in colder regions and during brutal winters. Either way, there's plenty of evidence, from written records to architectural designs, that medieval huts were often multi-purpose: kitchen, bedroom, barn. The layout is surprisingly functional. Animals near the door, humans toward the back. The fire in the center. It creates a warmth gradient and keeps the smell from being completely overpowering. You've even developed an unconscious sniff hierarchy. "That's just the goat" is now a sentence that needs no further explanation. And the goat, oh, the goat, is currently chewing on something that might have once been your sock. You pluck it from her mouth, scold her, and get exactly the blank stare you deserve. Goats do not fear you. They tolerate you. But when it's cold, even the goat knows the best place to be is curled in a quiet corner with its belly to the fire and its horns away from small children. These animal companions aren't pets in the modern sense. There's no squealing over baby animals, no knitted sweaters or personalized feeding bowls. But there's a bond, a respect. They feed you, clothe you, warm you. And in return, you keep them safe, sheltered, and very well aware of which corner is not for bathroom breaks. The dog lifts its head and gives a low woof. Not a bark. Just a status update. You listen. Nothing outside but wind and perhaps a distant owl. Still, you feel better knowing the dog's on alert. It's not just a source of warmth, it's your security system. One that doesn't require charging and only occasionally eats the bread. As night settles in fully, the fire dims to a comfortable glow. The hut is alive with soft sounds, snuffling, shifting, the squeak of someone adjusting their straw bedding. Maud the pig lets out a sigh so human it makes you turn your head. And here's a strange thing, you're grateful. Not just for the warmth, or the eggs, or the manure that's dried and ready for spring planting. You're grateful for the company. These animals, once outdoor creatures of the field and pen, are now part of your winter family. Not permanent residents, but seasonal allies in the fight against frostbite. You tuck the chickens under a bit of spare cloth to keep them from catching a chill. They blink slowly, unfazed by the kindness. The goat curls up tighter. The dog moves closer to your leg, a living hot water bottle with paws. And Maud? Maud doesn't move at all. She's already in the dreamlands, possibly chasing a carrot. You lie back, blanket pulled to your chin, surrounded by your very unusual, very warm, very necessary household. In this cramped, smoky, slightly smelly hut, you have everything you need to make it through another night. People. Fur. Feathers. Snouts. And a pig that snores like she owns the place. The wind picks up just after midnight, groaning through the trees and pushing against your hut like a drunken giant leaning on your walls. The thatch rustles, rattles, then gives off a resigned creak, just enough to remind you it's still barely clinging to the beams above your head. And now the real show begins. You'd hoped, somehow, that tonight would be quiet. But your home has other ideas. It starts with a soft hiss. Not a snake, but air forcing itself through the tiny gaps in the wattle and daub like it's got a personal vendetta. Then comes the occasional whistle, high and long, as if the walls are trying to speak. You lie on your back, eyes open, counting the sounds. 1. A creak from the corner beam. 2. The pop of embers in the fire pit. 3. The unmistakable whine of the wind sliding under the door. Your hut, your brave little mud and stick box, is losing its nightly battle against the cold. You sit up and feel the chill instantly wrap itself around you like a cold, damp shawl. The walls are breathing again, not warmly, but with the kind of exhale that reminds you how many places your home is open to the elements. This isn't a modern house with insulation, sealant, and a fax system humming like a lullaby. This is a box of compromise and compromise leaks. The roof, crafted from bundles of straw, tightly packed and lashed together, does its best. But best is relative. You've spent countless hours patching holes with moss, mud, and even bits of old tunics, but there's always a draft somewhere. Always a breeze that finds your ear and whispers, you missed a spot. And let's not even start on the eaves. Where the wall meets the roof is where the wind loves to make its entrance. It snakes in along the beams, finds the lowest point of your morale, and tugs. You get up to check the shutter. It's a plank of wood held closed by a leather thong, and it groans in protest when you press on it. Outside, the trees dance like they're in a trance, and you can hear snow hitting the ground with that muffled plop that promises shoveling, or in your case, awkward broom flailing, in the morning. You stuff a bit of fabric into the biggest gap you see, an old rag that smells vaguely of onions and goat. Doesn't matter. It helps. Sort of. As you turn to go back to bed, your foot hits the wall, and something cold falls from the roof onto your shoulder. You freeze. You reach up. Straw. Snow. A little ice. Just a little flake that had wormed its way through the thatch and waited until your timing was perfect. This happens. often. The wind lifts the thatch, snow finds a seam, and voila, surprise precipitation. You've learned to sleep with your mouth closed. And speaking of sleeping, the sound of the wind through your home isn't all unpleasant. Once you've stopped shivering and tucked yourself under a goat hair blanket, the hut starts to sing. Not melodically, of course, it's not a bard, but in its own clacky, whispery, breathing rhythm. It creaks when the wind shifts. It hums when the air slips across the fire hole. It thumps, groans, and rattles like an old man climbing stairs in the dark. And somehow, that helps you sleep. Not because it's soothing, but because it's familiar. Every groan from the timber, every whisper through the thatch, reminds you that this house is doing its job. It's still standing. It's still here. And so are you. Still, you can't help but fantasize. About stone walls. About glass windows. About actual insulation, the kind that doesn't involve pressing your body against a pig named Maud. But that kind of luxury is a world away. Maybe in the manor house. Maybe in the abbey. Certainly not here, in your hut on the edge of the village. Some monks write about the stillness of winter, how silence draws them closer to God. You wonder if those monks have straw in their hair and snow on their blankets. Probably not. You roll over and press your face into the warm spot your shoulder left behind. The wind howls again. The door shudders. But the fire glows gently, and someone in your bundle of bedmates mutters in their sleep something about soup, which is both hilarious and oddly comforting. So you close your eyes. Let the wind rattle. Let the thatch hiss and groan. Let the cold try its best. You've patched the holes. You've stuffed the cracks. You've made peace with the sound of survival. And if a bit of snow sneaks through and lands in your hair, well, you'll just call it medieval air conditioning. The church bell rings. Not loudly. Not even cleanly. It's more of a sluggish bong, as if the bell itself resents being awake in this weather. But it rings, and that means something. It cuts through the wind and the lead grumbles of animals and humans alike. It says, wake up. Time to remember you're more than frozen potatoes in wool tunics. You stir, rub the sleep from your eyes, and peer through the still dark interior of the hut. Someone else heard it too. Your aunt's already halfway into her boots, muttering a prayer under her breath and reaching for her shawl. Church bells in winter don't always mean service. Sometimes they mean someone's died. Sometimes they mean feast day. But always, they mean connection. The parish church isn't far, maybe a 5-minute walk if the snow hasn't drifted high and your shoes aren't frozen into soup bowls. You pull on your outer cloak, grab your hood, and prepare for what is, essentially, a spiritual pilgrimage through ankle-deep slush. Outside, the wind has taken a brief nap. Good. The sky is a low, grey lid, heavy with unspilled snow. The path to the church is already marked with footprints, some small, some hoofed. Everyone's making the journey. You nod at neighbors, wrapped like walking hay bales, their eyes squinting against the morning chill. The church itself is small, made of stone, its wooden door swaying slightly in the breeze. The inside is no warmer than your hut, really, but it's dry, and it smells like wax and incense, a rare change from damp wool and goat breath. A small fire smoulders in the corner, a concession to the frost. You join the others on the rough wooden benches, shoulders brushing breath steaming upward like tiny offerings. Here's the thing, in winter, church isn't just about salvation. It's about society. It's where news travels. Who's sick? Who's been blessed with a calf? Who's missing a chicken and suspects the miller's youngest? It's your bulletin board, your therapy session, and your chance to pretend you're not just surviving, but living. The priest enters, hunched and red-nosed, wrapped in a robe that looks only marginally more glamorous than your cloak. He begins in Latin. You understand maybe one word in 10, but the rhythm is familiar. The cadences lull you. You watch your breath join the others, all of you exhaling into the vaulted silence like a choir of winter ghosts. Candles flicker near the altar. Real beeswax, too, fancy stuff. The flame casts halos on the walls, golden and trembling. For a moment, you forget how cold your toes are. For a moment, you're just still. Present. And then the sermon begins, and your brain drifts a little. Not because you're bored, but because your stomach is already wondering what's for lunch. Probably turnips. Possibly gruel. Maybe, if the saints are smiling, a bit of barley bread with onion paste. But still, you stay. Because this moment, this breath, this gathering, it matters. Religion in winter takes on a deeper layer. It's not just doctrine. It's resilience. The rituals anchor your days, give them shape. Feast days break the monotony. Saints' days give you permission to rest, or, occasionally, to feast. Candlemas is coming soon, the midpoint of winter, when candles are blessed and hope stirs faintly beneath the snow. You remember last year, when someone claimed to see the Virgin's face in a snowdrift. Or the year before, when lightning struck the church roof and everyone took it as a sign to stop hoarding beans. Historians still argue whether medieval faith was more mystical than institutional, but for you, it's simple. Faith is how you breathe when the air itself tries to freeze your lungs. The priest finishes. You stand. You murmur the last responses, automatic but heartfelt. And when the final blessing is given, you step out into the day, blinking against the sudden white glare. Snow has begun to fall, slow, fat flakes like drifting feathers. The village glistens under a fresh coat. Even the thatch looks almost dignified. Back in the hut, the fire's been tended, and the warmth greets you like a low, smoky hug. The animals barely glance up. The dog thumps its tail once. Someone is already preparing the next meal, because hunger, like holiness, never truly pauses. You settle beside the fire, tuck your cloak beneath you, and think of the bell that started the morning. It's not just a call to prayer. It's a reminder that you're part of something. That winter, for all its silence and shadow, still echoes with voices, stories, and shared belief. Because even on the longest, coldest nights, the bells still ring. And when they do, you answer. By midday, your body's thawed just enough to remember what work feels like. No, not farming, not in this weather. The earth outside is as hard as dried meat, the plough is sleeping under a top of snow, and the fields are blank white slabs of not your problem for now. But don't get excited. There's still winter work. The kind of slow, fiddly, necessary tasks that pile up over months and now demand your attention with all the subtlety of a goat trying to dance. You start by checking the tools. Axes. Hoes. Scythes. Anything metal has been dragged inside to keep from rusting, and now you run your fingers over the blades, testing for dullness. One by one, they get a turn with the whetstone. It's rhythmic, soothing almost. Scrape, turn, test. Scrape, turn, test. The sound blends with the crackle of the fire and the soft thud of someone weaving in the corner. That someone is your aunt, her hands flying through a pile of nettle fibers. Not wool. Wool is valuable, meant for clothes and warmth. But nettle? Free, tough, and surprisingly useful. She's spinning it into thread to reinforce sacks and sew patches on winter tunics that are falling apart from overuse and goat nibbles. Textile work in winter is everywhere. Women, and sometimes men, sit with drop spindles and carding combs, fingers raw but practiced. It's not glamorous. It's not fast. But every thread spun now is one less panic later when someone rips a seam or needs a new foot wrapping. And then there's mending. You grab your own tunic and sit by the fire, needle in hand, trying not to stab yourself while patching the elbow for the 4th time this month. Some parts of it are more thread than original fabric, but it still holds warmth. That's all that matters. Children are at work too. Well, work is generous. They're making kindling, practicing braiding straw into makeshift mats, and occasionally being told to stop feeding the pig their sock. Everyone contributes, even if the contribution is more noise than productivity. You check the traps next. Not outside, those are frozen. But the ones inside, near the grain sack and under the bedding. Winter brings more than frost. It brings rats. Bold, hungry, ambitious rats that chew through sacks and occasionally stare at you like they've got opinions. The traps are simple, wooden boards, bits of cheese or fat, and hopes wrapped in string. You find 2 sprung. One has a rat. You dispose of it outside quickly, no point upsetting Maud the pig. She's sensitive. The other trap was tripped by an overly ambitious chicken. She's fine, but now deeply offended. Back inside, the air's thicker with smoke now. Not choking, but present. The fire's burning greenish logs today, still a bit damp. They hiss and pop, but heat is heat. You open the roof vent slightly and hope the breeze doesn't undo your fire-making efforts. You glance over at the boy next to you, his tongue poking out of his mouth as he whittles a block of wood. He's trying to make a toy, a little pig to replace the one the real pig broke last week in a tragic sitting accident. It's ugly. It's lopsided. It's wonderful. Winter is for making things, even badly. Above your head, bundles of herbs hang drying, not for flavor, but for medicine. Thyme for coughs. Mugwort for bad dreams. Sage for nearly everything. You pluck a sprig and toss it into the fire, just to smell something that isn't damp straw or old cabbage. It's a small joy. And in winter, small joys are everything. Outside, the snow has thickened. The light through the shutters turns silver and dull. You can hear someone chopping wood in the distance, steady, rhythmic thuds. They'll haul it back bundled on their back, snow clinging to their boots, cheeks red from the wind. And when they come in, you'll scoot over and make room by the fire. Because winter work never truly ends. It just shifts. It moves from the fields to the hands. From sowing seeds to sewing tunics. From harvesting grain to harvesting patience. Historians sometimes overlook these domestic labors, the quiet, repetitive actions that fill the hours and hold life together. But here in your hut, surrounded by frayed fabric, dull blades, and the faint smell of drying onions, it's clear this is the work that gets you through. You put down your needle. Stretch your back. The fire's still going. The room's still humming. The tools are sharper. The rat's been evicted. And your tunic, almost wearable again. The evening wind returns, curling around the corners of the hut like a stray cat with freezing claws. You wrap your cloak tighter, already dreading what the night will bring. Not just cold. Not just the relentless draft that sneaks in no matter how many rags you've stuffed into the walls. No, what you dread tonight, what everyone dreads, is sickness. Winter is a cruel time for the body. The air is damp, the fire's heat uneven, and everyone's breathing the same heavy, recycled air. You glance across the room, and there it is, the first warning sign, someone coughing. It's a dry, rasping cough. The kind that starts low and grows louder over days. A sound that makes everyone else in the hut instinctively lean back by half an inch, not out of fear, but out of memory. Colds are common. Coughs are expected. But sickness in winter has the potential to spiral fast. There's no real medicine here. Not like you'd hope. No pills, no syrups, no cozy pharmacies with pastel bottles. There are herbs. There are prayers. There are poultices that smell like roasted onions and despair. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they just give the illusion of help long enough for your body to catch up or give in. You reach into the bundle of dried plants by the hearth and pull out thyme and sage. Someone else adds a splash of ale to hot water, drops in the herbs, and hands it to the coughing woman. She sips it with shaking hands. No one speaks. The real danger, though, isn't always the coughs. It's what comes next. Fever. Shivering that even 5 blankets can't stop. That ghostly paleness, the labored breathing, the sweat that cools too fast. You've seen it before. Maybe last year. Maybe the year before that. Winter has teeth, and it doesn't just bite, it lingers. Respiratory infections are the worst. The chill seeps into lungs like an unwelcome guest and refuses to leave. Without warmth, without rest, without something stronger than boiled herbs, a simple cold can tip into something deadly. And then there's frostbite. A silent predator. You know a man who lost 3 toes because he went to relieve himself barefoot in the snow, too sleepy to notice the pain. Another woman nearly lost her fingers trying to save a newborn calf. Cold doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers until it's too late. Frostbite starts subtly, numbness, tingling, maybe a bit of whiteness on the skin. But when it turns purple, when the flesh goes stiff, everyone gets quiet. Because there's nothing to be done then. Warm water can help, sometimes. Rubbing with snow, ironically, only makes it worse. All you can do is hope the warmth comes back. And if it doesn't, well, you'll be learning to walk differently come spring. And still, you carry on. Because what else can you do? You wrap your fingers, your toes. You keep moving, even when your joints ache like old hinges. You take turns feeding the fire, breathing in wood smoke that might one day take your breath permanently. Some of the elderly stay in bed all day now. Not out of laziness. Out of self-preservation. Every trip to the cold edge of the room is a gamble. Every trip outside to fetch water might be one too many. You bring them hot drink when you can, tuck the blankets tighter, and listen to their stories. Because winter is full of endings, and you never know which tale might be their last. One man mutters about night air being the cause. It's a popular belief, bad air rising up from the ground or floating in at dusk, causing illness. Miasma, some call it. Theories vary, but the fear is real. That's why herbs hang from every beam, why bundles of dried lavender and rosemary are burned in corners. If you can't fight the illness, at least you can try to confuse it. Some folks whisper that sickness is punishment. For what? Who knows? Gossip. Skipped church. That time someone lied about how many onions they harvested. The logic is loose, but the anxiety is real. Historians often note how fragile life was in the medieval world. How easily the balance tipped from survival to tragedy. And while some argue that peasants were stronger for it, that they adapted better, you know the truth, no one adapts to loss. They just learn how to carry it. So you prepare. You stay warm. You share your ale. You check your toes. You offer the fire to those who need it most. And when someone coughs, you look them in the eye and say nothing, because what can you say? Just that you're here. That the fire is still burning. That they're not alone. And sometimes, that's enough.